I wish I looked like that. Wow, what a place to rehearse. Wow.
That was actually in Rochester. This past ACDA, one of the venues we went on a tour in.
I didn't get to hear your group.
Yeah, we were Thursday.
I was doing the honor choir. I was doing the honor choir.
That's right. All right, we're going to get started here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of And the Beat Goes On. I can't believe it's episode 10. Time that's just moving along here, even though we are mostly staying at our homes. My name is Ariane Harley Emerson, and I'm the Director of Music and Operations here at the Choir School of Delaware. And we are so excited that today Dr. Edith Copley is with us. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Thank you. Oh, we're great. We're great. Can't complain. Thank you again for being with us. We've been really looking forward to this. And I personally have been looking forward to catching up with you for a long, long, long time. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. And I just want to also introduce or have them introduce themselves, the other folks who are with us on our interview today. And why don't we start with Nishan?
Hi everyone, my name's Nishan. I've been at the choir school for 10 years and I'm loving it.
Awesome. And Miss Stanton.
Hi, I'm Brittany Stanton and I'm the Director of Education and Assistant Conductor at the choir school.
Awesome. So Dr. Copley, how are you doing in all of this, in this COVID-19 world?
Yes, well, it has certainly been an adventure. I guess that's the word I would use.
Yes.
Yeah, it's we had very little time to pivot. I don't know how much time you had, but we literally were leaving to go on spring break, and the university announced, "Oh yeah, we're going to go online for at least a couple weeks, see how this goes." And so all of spring break, our faculty was like, "What?" You know, trying to figure out how we're going to proceed and do that. And then after we had been online for maybe about a week or so, then it was announced, like almost every school, yeah, we're staying online until the end of the school year. Is that what happened at your school as well?
Very similar. I will say that we were very fortunate that we knew in the last few days of February, I had gotten a tip. I just happened to be meeting with some of our elected officials here in Delaware, and there was a comment like, I don't know, this is looking like it might be a thing. And at that point, you know, I was like, oh, I kind of knew it was coming. But because that first week of March was ACD Eastern Division, we performed at that. So during that time, I had some time like in car and travel time, bus time, to kind of be thinking about what might be happening. And then the week after that, we didn't have students because it was such an intense tour. We were gone for most of the week. And so we were closed to students that next week. And we used that time as the staff to kind of completely pivot during that time. And we were up and running the very next week. So I don't know that we would have, I mean, this is week 12, I think, Brittany, or so, that we've been kind of doing virtual, like after school programming and all of that. So we were able to get there very, very quickly, but it was only because of everything falling into kind of, it was just very serendipitous.
Well, Brittany, you had your work cut out for you, huh?
Yeah, just a little bit. Nobody has ever solely worked with choirs before in a virtual setting, so it presents an interesting challenge to anybody in the choir world.
Right. We were kind of in the same boat. I know that in the Choral Journal about a year ago, like last summer, there was an article about how to do blended learning with the choir online in the Choral Journal, and it was a university. And I think, in my opinion, and maybe you've run into this as well, I don't know, but in my opinion, there seems to be an equity problem with students that have, the equipment or just even having internet access to actually be able to do this. And like, I can't imagine doing like writing papers and trying to send papers with your phone. It's just, we ran into some of that kind of thing. But at the university level, of course, most universities go, okay, you're coming to university, got to have a computer. I mean, it's just a requirement. You have to have one. And so it's a little different at that level. But I mean, with your multi-generational, young kids, older people, I know there's people that, that are older that go, email? Nah, I don't do that. I mean, it's shocking, but it's true,
And I think that is the challenge. For us, we were very fortunate that we received some very generous gifts and donations that ensured that every single chorister was able to have a laptop. We had some things, materials that we already had, and we put them into the hands of kids. But then, like, you can only do so much with an iPad, exactly, in a phone. Like what you're saying was the problem that we ran into, and Brittany can speak to that for sure. But then, like, once we were able to get laptops to students, that was when we were really like cooking with grease. And I agree. And Chris Muntz, whose podcast Choralosophy, that was the whole episode was about kind of the equities, and more so the inequities that we're going to be like experiencing. Were all your students able to access internet at home, even though they had a computer?
Yeah, but I found that the bandwidth was, I mean, like really, like some people, it's like, just like what we're experiencing here, quite clear, no problem with it at all. But then there were other kids at home that had, they had equipment. Well, I had a couple students in my conducting class that only had a phone, that didn't have a computer. I even had a student whose roommate up in Flagstaff had contracted COVID. So he couldn't go back to his apartment to get his computer. So he was down with his parents, and the only computer in the house was his sister's, who was also in school, and she had to be on it. So do you see what I mean? So, but I found the bandwidth just going in and out, doing Zoom like we're doing right now. I don't know. Did you experience some of that?
Yeah, I think so. And Nishan, what do you think? From your perspective as a student, like, how challenging was it to kind of get to things at first? Did you feel like, we kind of were able to kind of get things going, or what was it from your perspective? I've actually never asked you this question before, so I'm very curious.
Well, yeah, it did take some time for me to properly get used to it, but as time went on, I kind of got used to doing this and that, and
yeah, it's probably very second nature now, do you feel? Or
yeah.
I remember, like, Nishan, I think you were probably the first to have like voice lessons, and I know that was a very, like, I remember I think you were the first lesson, you were the guinea pig. And so I think that like with the delay and the latency, like I remember being like, I don't know, but like, I think we got there.
I think we got there too.
So we got there. So what are your plans, Dr. Copley, for the fall? Are you guys going back yet? Or you guys aren't sure? Or
Oh yeah, we're definitely going back. It was announced that at our university that we are going to be on campus. Well, to me, that's kind of scary since we have 20,000 students. But they're saying that we're going to be going back to campus. But we haven't gotten anything definitive, Ariane, because we don't know if it's going to be, hey, we're going to be meeting in person, or if we're going to be, hey, these bigger classes are going to be online, you know, because we don't have the physical space to actually do this. I think our schedule is going to be blown apart, you know, like the actual teaching schedule, because like, hey, we need the choir room to do this bigger music history class. You're going to have to, and so I think it's going to be more blended. There's going to be maybe some in person, but it's going to be like small groups, you know, like maybe quartets or octets or something. And at the university level, I can do that. I can say, here's an octet. You're going to rehearse together. We're going to do social distancing. This octet, or maybe, you know, I have a feeling that I'm going to be rehearsing more in octets than like, oh, let's have the altos come this day.
Got it.
You know what I mean? I think it will build more independent musicianship. And of course, you know, our scenarios are a little different than like in the K-12 classroom where they're going to be meeting students on a regular basis. I'm thinking that I would be meeting with octets on a, you know, like weekly basis and working with them. And then maybe every 2 weeks, we would go to a larger place to actually put the choir and distance them out, maybe a large church or something like that, where you could all go in and just spread out into a major space, which would have to be over 2,000 square feet, at least, something like that, 2,000 to 3,000 square feet to just be able to distance a choir of like 40. My choir is typically 60 to 70, but I'm thinking maybe next year I will purposely make the choir a little smaller, just a little, so we can actually do this. We have a number of choirs at NAU, Northern Arizona. The choir that I conduct, the Shrine of the Ages Choir, which we'll talk about maybe in just a bit, a little more detail. A men's choir, women's choir, university singers, which is non-majors, 2 vocal jazz ensembles, handbell choirs, you know, 3 to contemporary a cappella groups. You know, there's just all kinds of choirs, that a chamber choir. So because of all of these ensembles, I don't even know when we can use our room. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking of things like maybe we'll be outside rehearsing when the weather permits, but we're at 7,000 feet and we get over 100 inches of snow a year. So we're not going to be outside. Most people say, oh, you're in Arizona, there's a cactus outside. No, there's really not. There's a mountain outside. So, you know, it's very different. So, you know, and people in the southern states, you know, like Texas and Florida and so on, they could probably do a lot of outside rehearsing all year round, you know, get outside. But I do know that what needs to guide us is the science and the research, and it seems to be changing every day. So in answer to your question, I think all of us are going like this, like, I don't know what we're going to have. But I think what is important for everybody, and for your school as well, that you may be doing one thing at one point, and then you might have to pivot. You might have to do exactly what you did this spring, which is, okay, wait, we have to do this, and to be able to pivot. So what I'm planning to do is plan something that would be online, you know, like how would we proceed online? And then if we get to do some in-person stuff, great. You know, or a combination of the two, great. But, you know, how can we do this? And I think what we do is going to change. We can't do as much music. We can't rehearse as much, so we're not going to do as much music. We may be doing different music, because I don't think polyphony works online very well. You know, doing things with melismas and polyphonic music doesn't really work. So maybe things that are more homophonic. And also the other thing, I think I'm planning to maybe do some of the more traditional music that I wish all my kids knew. You know what I mean? Rather than, because I think our budgets are going to be like zero. You know, like we don't have a budget this year.
Yeah,
so we're going to have to go back to our libraries, find pieces that worked, and kind of resurrect them from years ago. This was a great piece. Kids love singing this. Let's work on this. And we're going to just have to go back to our libraries. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, we've been thinking about what you've been saying as well. Like, we're like, okay, we're going to move forward with the next school year, the next season. But like, how complicated pieces are might look, well, the type of complication, like you were saying with polyphony, probably won't be the case, definitely more chordal in nature. And I agree that it's going to be, it takes so much longer. Like we've been learning pieces online, and it can totally be done. And we've been, you know, getting the audio files and the video files, and we're mounting a big gala concert, but everything takes twice as much time than when we're in person. We normally put our gala concert up in 3 weeks, maybe, Nishan, you'd say. So generally after the Bach Festival, there's about 3 weeks to our biggest concert of the year. And it's an intensive, you know, 3 weeks where we put it together. But now we've been rehearsing since the middle of March just for this one concert. And so that's how the cookie crumbles.
Right. It takes a lot more time. And but I do think that also, in addition to being able to pivot, I do think, excuse me, there's going to be resources, more resources, better technology, more apps, and more software to actually help us have more efficient rehearsals. I think that's all coming down the pike. And so we just have to be watchful for all that new information.
Absolutely. Now, Nishan, do you have, I'm going to open up for some questions from Nishan and from Ms. Pasco. So I'll start with Nishan. Do you have a question today for Dr. Copley?
Yeah, so I researched you, and I see you, yeah. And I see that you've been involved in a lot of choral things, but I wanted to ask, how was your childhood like?
Well, I had a very interesting childhood, and one that I'm thankful for. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and it was at the end of a dead-end road, a gravel road. So the closest neighbor was like a mile away. So somewhat isolated in a way, not in a city at all, and so it was a farm that had all of the farm things. Just name, we didn't have ducks and didn't have geese, but we had chickens and hogs and cattle, and we raised corn and soybeans and oats and hay, and come home from school, change clothes, go out, do chores, come back in, practice piano, set the table, and then, after dinner, homework. I mean, it was just regimented. I have 2 brothers, one older and one younger. And so they were always out helping Dad. I was usually in the house helping my mother. That was kind of the day where girls did this, boys did that. I wasn't happy about that either, because I wanted to go out and drive a tractor, which I did, but not as much as I would like. I also, I went to one-room country schools, like out in the middle of nowhere, where just 20 people were in a class and one teacher taught everything. So that's kind of unusual now. That almost does not exist anymore. Well, it doesn't exist. They're building, elementary schools everywhere. And then I went to a junior senior high school, and I got involved in music in 4th grade, playing piano. In junior high, started getting involved. 6th grade, I started playing in band. I played clarinet in band. And then I was singing in the choirs and stuff, because I could read music. I played piano. So I was like, hey, Edie, I also had really good relative pitch. So I could just give pitches in rehearsal, and hey, give us this, and I could give a pitch. And so that was kind of fun. And then in high school, they asked me to play string bass in the concert choir or concert band. So I learned how to play string bass with my uncle, who was a principal bass player with a symphony nearby. So I studied with him. And then I went to college, and I was a voice major. So, I've kind of done a little bit of everything. But it was a nice way to grow up, lots of outdoor activities and lots of imagination. It's kind of like, well, I couldn't help with this. And so I would take the dog and I would go on adventures with the dog. And, and I think my experience of reading and doing those things outside shaped who I was. I also had great teachers. in junior high, high school, college, wonderful teachers, and who encouraged me to maybe pursue music. But when I went to college, Nashon, I was a biochemistry major with some music. So I was doing music and biochemistry, 2 majors. And then the lab started conflicting with the choir. And then it was like, no, I'm going to do choir. And I also decided that maybe working with people in the classroom would be a little more exciting than being in a lab with a petri dish and staring at bacteria growing. And, you know, that's a very isolating kind of profession as well. I was really big into genetics. I wanted to go into genetic research. So, but now I became a choral director. And when I look back on my years, which Nashon are a lot of years. When I look back, I don't regret any of it. I don't regret any of it. I chose the right path, and I've met wonderful people along the way, and I've worked with thousands of fantastic students. So it's been a blessed career and a blessed life. So.
Awesome. And Brittany, do you have a question for Dr. Copley?
Yeah, well, I'm wondering, you kind of touched on it just a little bit, but you know, you're kind of a trailblazer for women in the conducting world. And so I'm just wondering what kind of challenges you might have faced in your education and your early career, and how you got to where you are.
Well, you know, this was a question that was asked of me when I first started teaching at NAU, you know, almost, well, 30 years ago, maybe 20 some years ago. And it was a conductor in California, and he wanted me to do a session at a Western Division student symposium. And the question was, well, you know, there's not very many women conductors at the university level anyway. And so, you know, there's this person and you and someone else. And so, you know, could you do a session on women conductors at the university level? And my response to him was very careful, but I said, well, you know, there were hardly any years ago, and now there's a few. And I'm hopeful that there's going to be more in the future. And then I looked at him, I said, how long did that take? It just didn't, you know, it didn't take that long. And I said, I would rather do a presentation on how to work with junior high changing voices. And so I did a session on that. But to answer your question, I think that the challenge is, like I said a minute ago, I'm blessed. I didn't really face that many challenges going into this. And to be honest, I wasn't planning to do what I'm doing now. I mean, yes, I always had this desire to teach college. I mean, like when I was in college, I was like, oh, that'd be so cool to do this. But I want to teach at a little school, a little rural school first, and then I'll get my master's. And then I want to teach in an inner city school. I want to teach at a big inner city school. And then I'll do a doctorate. And then I'll maybe go teach at a college. And I wanted to teach at a little college like where I went. I went to a little private liberal arts college in Iowa, up in Northeast Iowa, Luther College. I'm not Norwegian, but I was Lutheran. Okay, so anyway, I always kind of wanted, when college decided I want to do this. Then when I went to grad school one summer, I went to summer school, and I was in a conducting class, and I was studying with someone who's really major at the time, Robert Page. He was at Temple University, and he was conducting the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra chorus. I mean, he was just major. And so I was in a conducting class with him, and I was, 21 years old. And he looked at me and he goes, you need to do this professionally. And I looked at him and I went, what? And I said, no, come to Temple, study with me. Nope, I'm teaching at a little rural school. So I was. So every year he contacted me and said, come to Temple. I went, nope. And then after 3 years of teaching in the rural school, he said, I've changed schools. I went to Pittsburgh. I'm now at Carnegie Mellon. Will you come? And I went, why don't you teach there for a year and figure everything out? Then I'll come. So then I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon to do a professional conducting degree. It was an MFA in conducting performance. So I worked with orchestras. I was the opera pit conductor. I was doing, and that's what I thought I wanted to do, go into opera pit conducting. And then I ended up getting a job back in Iowa teaching at an inner city school. So I went back and did the inner city school for a number of years. And then I thought, well, I should maybe go back and finish because it was in the middle of my master's program. And then I ended up getting a job, and Nahshon, this is more of my life story. I ended up getting a job teaching in Vienna, Austria. So I taught in Austria for 4 years, teaching junior and senior high school internationally. So I taught a little school, I taught at an inner city high school, and I taught internationally. Then I went for the doctorate, and then I ended up taking a job at Northern Arizona University, and I've been there ever since. So I've stayed in one university job my whole life.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Like that's just, it just is like, that's so crazy. That's such a, like, yeah, it just, for sure. And I mean, and Robert Page, I mean, that's great. I mean, like, that's
Well, and when I did my doctorate, I was at the conservatory in Cincinnati. So I worked with 5 conductors there, 2 orchestra conductors and 3 choral directors. So I worked with 5 different conductors when I was there, which was a great experience. And while I was in Cincinnati, I was also the assistant conductor of the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra Chorus. So I did that. So I stayed in the professional conducting kind of preparation thing. And I conducted the master chorale here in Flagstaff for 23, 24 years. I did that as well, preparing major works with the orchestra here. So, but back to Brittany's question, and that's that I think there are many more university women conductors now. I can go and say, oh yeah, she's in Alabama, she's in Oregon, she's up at Seattle University. These people are in California. There are definitely more men conducting at the university level, but there are way more women, very talented women. Amanda Quist down in Miami. They're all over, and just wonderful group and colleagues. But to answer your question about what challenges did I run into, I think some women run into real prejudice or real problems getting tenure at their university, things like that. And I must say, I never experienced any of that. I felt like I was always welcomed at NAU and supported at NAU. It's one of the reasons I stayed. It's just great administrative support. And so I think that, and there's even more professional women conductors, not a lot. You look at the professional orchestras in the United States, and, there's Joanne Folletta, and there's a conductor in Maryland, and, there are some, but not a whole lot in the professional. It's really slow. When I was in Vienna, there were absolutely no women in the Vienna Philharmonic. It was not allowed. You could not be a woman and be in the Vienna Philharmonic when I was there in the 1980s. Wasn't allowed. So things have changed. Now there are women in that orchestra. So it's changing.
It's slowly, but we're getting there. Now, being with your choir, first, why don't you tell us about your ensemble and the history of your ensemble? Because I think that I'm not sure, but I feel like Shrine of the Ages Choir might be one of the kind of longest standing collegiate ensembles, perhaps.
Well, it started, the ensemble started as I think it was called the Arizona State College Concert Choir. It started in 1933 is when it was started. So it was the first college concert choir in Arizona, before ASU in Tempe and University of Arizona down in Tucson. Those are the big regent universities in our state. NAU is about 20,000. U of A is like 40-some thousand, and ASU is over 90,000 students now, or close to 100,000 students. So we're kind of the little baby school. But our school started at the turn of the century, around 1899, as a normal school, a teaching school to teach people, teach women predominantly how to teach in the schools. And that's how it started. Then it started getting a little larger and men enrolling in the university or the college. And then they started this choir. It was started, and then the name Shrine of the Ages Choir started in the late 1930s when the choir started singing at the Shrine of the Ages. And the Shrine of the Ages is another name for the Grand Canyon. So the Shrine of the Ages Choir would go to the Grand Canyon and do the Easter sunrise service at the canyon every year. And then it was recorded with the governor of Arizona describing it on the radio, because we didn't have television. He would describe on the radio the sunset coming over the canyon, and the choir would sing on the radio. This broadcast was sent all over the United States on NBC radio affiliates, and it was also broadcast overseas during World War II to all of our servicemen. So it has a very long-standing tradition. And they called it the Shrine of the Ages Choir. And then a few years later, they actually built like a hall, or a presentation hall, a small presentation hall called the Shrine of the Ages, right on the rim, on the south rim of the canyon. But really the name of the choir started before they built the building. Most people feel like they built the building and then they named the choir, but it's the other way around. This tradition went all the way into the 1970s. But I'm telling you, when Easter is early and the sun comes up and it's March and the wind is blowing 20 miles an hour, and we've done it. I've taken the choir, we've sung the Easter sunrise service there. It's about 0 or 5 below with the wind chill factor, to stand on the edge of Mather Point and sing. So it's a tough thing. But if it's in April, it can be quite, it's still cold, but it's not like March. Yeah. So we stopped the tradition in the 70s. And I did ask the conductor at the time why he'd stopped. And he said it was expensive to go, and also it's cold. And he said, I just wanted, but we've done it, come back. We did the 100th anniversary of the Easter sunrise service. We did the 100th anniversary. So we go back every once in a while, and I'm planning to come back this year and do it next spring. We'll do the Easter sunrise service maybe again. If not the Easter sunrise service, to go up and actually do a church service at sunrise with the choir, maybe in May, and to actually do that and invite alumni to participate. So that's the plan. So.
Awesome. That's a really rich history of the ensemble. So what's the ensemble like today? And has this been the same ensemble you've been working with your entire time at NAU, or?
No, when I came in 1990, I was the assistant director of the choirs there. Mike Scheibe, who's at USC, Mike Scheibe was the director of choral studies. And so Mike was there for 3 years, and then he left to go to Miami. And so I became the interim director my 4th year there, and then became the director, my 5th year, the official director after a national surge. The choir, when it first started, was about probably close to around 30 or 40 students would be in it. And they did a lot of touring around our state. And then the choir grew. When Mike Scheibe was here, the choir grew up to more like 70, 72. It was a big concert choir. And I've had it as high as 72, but I like around 64 or so. So it's in the 60s. A lot of schools choose to have their top choir be a chamber choir, and so that they can travel and compete and do that. But for me, I wanted it to stay a concert choir because more music ed majors could participate, and it wouldn't be as select, and more students that wanted to, more students could work with me if I had kept it as a concert choir. So the top concert choir is this group. We have a wonderful women's choir, really fabulous women's choir, with all of the incoming majors, music majors, and women that have experience singing. They've been in the all-state choir. They've done all kinds of regionals and things like that. So it's a really great women's choir, a really fun men's chorale. They have a great time. Men's chorale always have a good time. It's just the way it is. And then the University Singers is big. It's like 90, and it's our non-major choir. So that meets in the evenings and one night a week. And we have a lot of kids that like to participate in that. But in the Shrine of the Ages choir is, like I said, around 60. It's mostly music majors, but I also have probably about 10 non-music majors, but most of them are vocal performance, Bachelor of Arts in Music, or choral music education majors. So. And
how do you keep like the excellence always so high? One of the things that I think that's always a challenge is that kids are always graduating, and sometimes you get big crops of people, and it's just the way the cookie crumbles. Like how do you manage that?
You know, what would be wonderful is to have a 60 voice choir and 20 graduate and then 20 come in. You have 40, you know, 2/3 of them are coming back.
Right.
You know, I think that's close to what I'm going to have this year. It's going to be good. But last year, oh, half the choir was new, you know, like more like 32 people were new. So when we started in the fall, it was like, you know, it was a big learning curve. But I think that a lot of it is the students that are returning. Don't you find that the kids that have been in the ensemble are real mentors to the new ones, and that they're really, you know, and there's this, we've just talked about it. There's this incredible tradition of this choir. And the choir, you know, like as I said earlier, would go around Arizona and sing all around Arizona. Well, we do that. We sing around Arizona for a couple of years, but then I take them internationally. And then we go someplace international every 3 years. And I always take them someplace that they probably won't go in their lifetime. So we've gone to South Africa. We've gone to New Zealand. We've gone to the Baltics. We've gone to, you know, Estonia and Latvia. And, you know, so I take them, I've taken them to Bulgaria and Istanbul. You know, I take them to places, you know, I don't take them like, let's go to London. We're going to go to Paris. You know, well, they're going to probably go there in their lifetime, or maybe. You know, so I take them places that, and we were supposed to go on an international tour this spring to, ready, South Korea and Hong Kong.
Oh boy.
Not happening. Well, we want to go next year, but I don't think it's going to happen next year either. We can't because of the virus and all kinds of other factors. Like all universities, we're facing tremendous budget cuts, millions and millions and millions of dollars. You know, like, excuse me, Aaron, you don't have a budget this year. You don't have. Sorry, you don't have that staff person anymore in your office. Sorry, we're going to take away graduate assistantships. Sorry, we're getting rid of, you know, entry-level faculty. It's going to be bloody, especially at smaller private schools. They're going to really struggle. And we're going to struggle. So that said, I don't think we're going to be able to do it, which is sad, you know, but, you know, as teachers, this coming year, the big thing we're going to have to do is we have to evaluate the risk. What's the risk to our students? You know, we must always have that in the back of our mind, you know, and that this coming year is, what are the risks? How can I keep everybody safe, including me? I'm in this wonderful older person category. That's right. John. I'm one of those older people. And so I'm concerned for my own safety with this virus. I really am, because I do have, you know, I had pneumonia 4 times in my life. When I was 2, when I was in college, when I was in Vienna, I had pneumonia. And so my lungs are compromised. So if I get this, I might be one of those statistics. So I have to be careful for me. But I do think that it is a big paradigm shift for us. We end up saying, hey, we usually do this concert in 3 weeks. Well, now it's more about the process. And when the process is longer, and it's all about, okay, how can we stay safe? And let's take it a little slower, and, you know, and let's dig into how we want to do this, and maybe a little better, and not be so geared up for the concert, but working on the, you know, how we're going to get there, you know.
And how do you start off in each year when you start off, to create your sound, to create that, like, I mean, I feel like over the years, at least for over a decade, I've been kind of watching a lot of your work, and there's a consistency in the sound. And what do you do on, I guess, day one of rehearsal to start building that choral sound? Like, how do you do it? We want to know the secrets.
The secret, the sauce, you know, the secret sauce.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things. One, you know, auditions are huge, you know, doing the auditions. And so that you are listening for people who, there's so many aspects that I'm looking for. Yeah, I'm looking for someone who has a nice voice, a beautiful voice. But on the other hand, I've put people in the choir whose voice is not, you know, not a solo voice, really not a solo voice, but they're such a good musician. They're such a good sight reader, and they have such great ears. You know, they really can hear, and they can sing in tune, and they really, you know, and, you know, when you're dealing with all different kinds of age groups, they're going through all kinds of vocal transition. And so a lot of times you say, oh, boy, that kid has really bad pitch. Well, no, that's not it. He's just going, he or she is going through a time in their life where, it's a technique thing. It's not an ear thing. It's a technique thing. And so at the university level, I'm not dealing with that as much, but I still am, because we all know that guys that I can't count how many guys I've brought into the university that I've given major scholarships to that are basses. I mean, they have low notes that are so good. And by the time they're a senior, they're singing like second tenor, their voices are still changing and moving up. They do this voice change and go like this, and then it kind of goes back up again. And so I'm constantly dealing with voice change too, or voice teachers that say, you know what, she really shouldn't sing for a soprano. Yeah, I know, but she has a high E flat. Yeah, I know, but she should really sing second. So we move people around all the time. So auditions are important for that musicianship ear, also expression. I want to see someone that comes and does an audition and, and they're there. They're not just, So I'm looking for someone who's expressive. And I also contact teachers. What kind of student is this? Is this student successful? Is this student reliable? So, and then that's done. So now I've narrowed it down to this many students, and it's more than I want, but narrow it down. And then I have a placement audition in person in the fall before school starts. They all come in for an evening, and all the first altos come in, and I actually do a placement. Who do they sing next to the best? And I learned this from my college director, Weston Noble at Luther. He did this there's a video that GIA put out with him, how to place your singers in the choir. Well, that was what I had to go through when I was in college. I witnessed it every year I was in the choir. And then when I started teaching, I did it when I taught. And I still do it to this day, all these years later. So I try to find, it's not about matching the person next to you. It's finding that space that you sing the best with the combination. And sometimes it's a little voice with a big voice. Maybe it's a big vibrato with not much vibrato. It's opposites, attract each other. And so that's the big thing, is that the kids know that they're in a place where they sound their best and that they can sing. They can actually sing. And then and we stay in that formation for several weeks with the choir. That's how they sit, so that they can get used to the person next to them, used to the section, and used to the choir. And it's all, I think 80% of what we do is listening. It's building their ears to listen. And I'm constantly asking them, so what happened there? What are you hearing there? Second tenors, what did you hear there? Oh yeah, that wasn't good. Why? What happened? And I let the music ed majors or performance, whatever, I call them the vocal performance people all the time. So wait a minute, how do we deal with the format here? Sopranos, how do we mess with this? The vowel isn't really working up there. So Jill, what do you think? And then Jill actually, he says, well, I think maybe if we modify this a little bit more, okay, let's do that. Then they do it. And then I look down the line and say, no, wait a minute, turn and look at each other. Are there all of these vowel shapes matching? And then they turn and look and they go, oh, no. So it's visual and it's oral all the time. They're singing in circles. They're, and I guess we're supposed to avoid that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But constantly changing. Then once they get kind of geared into the listening, then I'd move them into a mixed formation with octets. I move them into double choir formations. I move them into, all different kinds. Row formations, one big row of basses and one big row of tenor, things like that. So I give them all different kinds of things, because then they have to listen differently. They're constantly listening differently. And then once they get into the new formation, then I always say, okay, let me know how that worked. And you know what? 2-3 days later, there's always someone that goes, this isn't working. My voice and that voice doesn't go. And then I look at the chart and go, oh my gosh, you're right. I need to move you. And so it's always trying to find the comfort zone for the students so that they can be successful and feel, and you know what, the more you do this, the more they feel like a unit. And that's what choir is all about, not only musically, but as a community. And The other thing I want to bring up about Shrine that I think is really important that you may want to utilize in some of your groups that you're working with is that every week we do the appreciation book. And what we do is we actually identify, like, let's say I'm going to give the appreciation book to Neshan. And I say, Neshan, we've known each other for like 4 years now. And Neshan, we've sat next to each other. And I just love singing with Neshan. And he always comes into the rehearsal with a smile on his face. And he always brightens my day. And, and there's been a couple times, like a month ago, I was really down and I called him and he just changed. I mean, I was so appreciate him because he's made a difference in my life. So I'd like to give the appreciation book to Neshan. And so, everyone, and to start it, everyone goes 2, 4, 6, 8, who do we appreciate? And then I got it last week, so I'm giving it to Neshan. Now, Neshan then will give the book the next week. How long does this take? 5 minutes? Not long. But it's morphed over the years. I didn't start it. One of my students did like 20 years ago, and we've kept it for 20 years. Every week we do this, one day out of the week. And some days we miss it because we're in performances or dress rehearsals, just doesn't work. But then the next week we'll do it. And then the cool thing is that now it's morphed to the kids actually start by, thank you, Dr. Copley, for giving, now Neshan's turn. Thank you, Dr. Copley, for giving me the book last week. Yes, I love spending time with you too. And it's a mutual appreciation with each other. Then it's, how about the choir? I really appreciate being in the choir. I've met so many great friends. And I appreciate Dr. Copley, and they try to make me cry. And, and then they actually give it to the next person, but still only takes about 5 minutes. And you know what? It builds an atmosphere of appreciation in the room. And you can do this with any, with middle school choir, high school choir, but every week you're appreciating a new person and you look at who's gotten it before and you try not to repeat it. So it moves actually around the room so that as many people as possible are being appreciated during the course of that time. So I think it's a real neat tradition that we do in the Shrine of the Ages choir.
I think and I want to incorporate more of that into what we're doing. We did something on a larger scale in Rochester. We had done the first set in the morning. We're like, great. And I was like, well, here we are in this hot warm-up room and we've got an hour into the next set. We're not going to warm up again. We're not going to run through anything again. And we had basically an appreciation circle and everyone went and said something. And I have to say, all these years, I think it was one of the most incredible experiences I've had as a conductor. We were all crying. We were all right before he went on. But it was just, I don't know, Neshan, what was your experience when we kind of did the appreciation circle right before ACDA?
And to sympathize with what you said, Mr. Harley, we out of all the times that I've been singing and being in this choir, we've never had a opportunity to really truly understand each other like that. And it made me really feel happy.
Yeah. And Brittany, what was your experience with that?
Well, when it started, I was really concerned about trying to keep it together because it was just tears the whole time. And I'm like, oh no, we have to go perform. But you know what? It made that performance better.
It did. It was I was so happy after the first performance. It's like, this is great because you work so hard. And then I realized, I guess it had taught me the lesson there, I think, was that people will sing so much better if you just take a little time out to remember that the choir is made up of humans and to really to care for that human resource. But the difference between that first and second performance, just because of a little bit of connectivity and community and people being able to express it was unbelievable. I almost feel like, I don't know that it's like a snow globe moment and it's a perfectly encapsulated moment. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. The whole trip was worth that 40 minutes. And it was even better than the performance, just to to do that. So that is definitely something we will, and that was our last performance. That was the last time we were all together. And I think, given in this kind of pandemic kind of environment, to know that it was like, one, there was a closure, and two, we also had this amazing community experience to be together and to appreciate one another and to love on one another. The year was great. It was a great end of it was incredible. So for folks who are listening, yeah, the time is totally worth doing it. And I think there's a lot to that. And I love the idea of doing it like weekly and having it pass through the choir and just being kind of a constant thing. I think it's a cultural kind of thing. It's about the culture of the classroom. I don't know. I just can't say enough about it. It was such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm just taking a look at the clock here. This has been so great. I have like 1,000 more questions that I have written down here. But one thing I definitely want to get to is with a lot of our conductors that we bring on, we try to ask them about doing a 2 pattern. And the reason why we ask about the 2 pattern is because the 2 pattern for conductors is a problematic pattern. Like, you know, they show you this like beautiful, perfect parabola in the book. And then I have noticed, like, I don't know that I've actually seen anyone conduct a beautiful, perfect parabola and conducting a 2 pattern. And so every time I see someone conducting, I always am looking out to see if I can catch their 2 pattern. And this is a weird thing that I do. And I watch for it all the time. And I'm like, ooh, and I'm like, oh, I could try it that way next time. And I kind of put it there. And so literally everyone who's been on has had a different take of conducting a 2 pattern. So how do you conduct your 2 patterns? Is it different in fast meter or tempi rather than slow? Like how do you deal with the 2 pattern?
Well, there's a couple of things. There are definitely different 2 patterns, and I do use different 2 patterns depending on the rep and what I'm doing. One of the problems, I'm going to go like this. One of the problems of this pattern, you know, that we see this, you know, J, I call it the J, you know, is that it sometimes can work once music is totally prepared, because like when you're in a performance mode, most of the time I try to teach the choir so they're conductor proof. In other words, they don't really need me. This is a Margaret Hillis quote. I try to prepare the choir for a guest orchestra conductor so the choir, they're conductor proof. The orchestra director could do some kind of crazy thing and the choir will still keep going. You know, they'll still keep the subdivision going. They'll just ignore them and keep going. So, but in this 2 pattern, this J works if it's in something where the people really know the piece and you're in a performance and you can really do this. But I find that this J pattern does not very well clearly define the beat, because the beat, once you know, like if I was drawing this on the wall over here and I went, okay, here's the J, here's your J. And then I said, okay, Ariane, come up and label where 1 is and where 2 is. And I was going like this, you would go, well, 1 is like here, 2 is like here, you know, no, wait, 1, and it's like, well, wait a minute. If you don't know where it is, how are they going to know?
Right.
So, so for me, if I'm rehearsing a choir and it's in 2, I will do what they call a vertical focal point conducting, where you're actually doing more of it's almost like a check mark, because then you can go 1 is going off of this way and going out, and 2 comes in. So 2, like in all conducting, it seems like the last beat of the measure always comes from right to left. So it's always like here, and you do 6, and then you come in this way, and 4 comes in this way. So the last one always comes in. So you can see like, oh, 2 is there, 1 is there, and it's going to exactly the same point. So that then the choir can actually, you know, I mean, like, I'm sure you've heard this rule. It's a Robert Shaw rule. You please put the consonant ahead of the beat. Put the vowel on the beat. Well, if you do this, no, you can't do that. You can't. So you can't actually say to the choir, hey, put this ahead of the beat because it's not clear enough. But if you do the check, then they can actually go, oh, this is ba, pa-dee, doo-doo, mama, fa fa, whatever. You can put everything ahead of it. The other pattern, there's two other ones. Two. Woohoo. And these are patterns that I use, again, in rehearsal with Renaissance music, in rehearsal, where they need a clear beat so they can follow, is a dome pattern where I'm actually doming from one to the other. So one goes out and two comes in. 1 and 2. And the reason why it creates clarity, just like this one, is because there's a change of direction after you give the beat. I give this and I change direction. This doesn't have a change of direction. 1, 2. I don't change direction after I give the beat. It's still going in the same direction. So in this is a great rehearsal for Renaissance music, slow Renaissance stuff, because then you can actually say, make sure that you still keep your consonants before the beat, and this stays. But then when it's in performance, this is kind of squarish, and you can change the size of it, and make it bigger as it goes. But in performance, I like using a figure 8, where there's actually a point at the bottom. It looks like almost like a bow tie, here's a beat, and then here's a beat, and here's a beat, and here's a beat. And so in performance of Renaissance music, I like kind of this modified infinity gesture. And that way I can actually, this is the important syllable. Oh, and now the important syllable is here, because we don't have bar lines. So I can actually make it, depending on where the stress is. So it can be expressive and at the same time. So that's 4 different 2 patterns for you. 4.
Yeah, I mean, that's great.
2 of them that's for clarity, and then 2 of them that could be in performance that has the capability of being more expressive as you're doing it.
And I think those are all really great things. And what I love about those is I feel like in different things they can be used for. And the check one too, Dr. Rollo Dilworth also does that one too, in faster things that are more rhythmic, just to
and Baroque music.
Time and
and the tendency in Baroque music is to play things too long, sing things too long. They need to be shorter. So with this more vertical things, it gets it brighter, it gives it more lift, and also, whereas this gets it more lugubrious, it gets it more sticky, and then you say, oh, no, you're slowing down. Well,
right. And then the figure 8 is great too, because without those bar lines and with kind of the hemiola feels, you can absolutely kind of guide those through in the figure 8, and also get the benefit of the 2 and the 4 all at the same time, with the super meter there. I love it. This is why I love asking this, because I'm like, someone needs to write a book on the 2 pattern and how to do it, because we understand how to do a 4 pattern well in different ways, and we understand how to do the 3 pattern well in certain ways, but the 2 pattern I find to be really problematic, and like there's something about it, I don't know, that I love it. So I love all of those suggestions. I love the dome one too. I think that's I'm certainly going to use that one more. I don't tend
the big thing is that when you're doing the dome, that you don't change the angle of the hand. You don't want to go this. It's not that. It's the angle of the hand stays the same. It stays at the same angle when you're doing it.
That makes a lot of sense to me, just to keep this plane the same. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we're just running out of time here. What I want to do before we do go off is I do want to play a short recording of Shrine singing here, Shrine of the Ages singing. Eschenwald Sleep is what we're going to do here, because I think that one is a little bit shorter here. And the recording comes in, for folks who are watching at home, it comes in a couple seconds into it. So, but it's absolutely lovely. Your soloist does a great job. Can you tell us where this was recorded? Like it looks like an amazing venue.
This is in a cathedral in Riga, in Latvia. We did a 2-hour workshop with Eschenwalds when we were in Riga. And then we did a concert with the Latvian Music Academy's top chamber choir that is conducted by Eschenwald's teacher. We did a concert with them. And so this was part of that concert in Riga in the cathedral.
That's awesome. Well, here we go. I'm just going to share my screen here and we're going to take a look at this recording here. Here we go. That's just so beautiful.
Great
So
venue.
beautiful.
Thank you.
I just absolutely love that, and the hairpins at the end, the mezzo di voces on just the hum. It's just so controlled and beautiful, and it's just gorgeous, beautiful. As we close out today, Brittany's going to read for us our quarantine quiz. So we're going to ask some questions. I'm going to put 90 seconds on my iPad on the timer here. And when the timer is done, you'll see a picture of a duck revealed, and it'll scream and quack and spin and all that kind of fun stuff. Again, we're going to ask questions. If you've done that thing while in isolation and quarantine, you'll put your finger on your nose and we'll all play along with you. Here we go. Whenever you're ready, Brittany.
Ready. Skipped online school because your internet was down. Joined a virtual party. Lost track of the days of the week. Morphed into a nocturnal being. Logged onto Zoom with business attire on the top and pajamas on the bottom. Spoken to a friend you haven't caught up with in a while. Binge watch a show in 48 hours or less. Shopped online for something you didn't need. Hid away in your room because your family was driving you crazy. Buy snacks for a week and run out a day or two later after going to the store. Worked from your bed. Slept past noon. Played a board game. Did a puzzle. Cut your own hair. Baked bread. Made a TikTok video. Spent more time on social media than off. Taken a face mask selfie. Coughed and wondered. Skipped a shower. Gave into Tiger King. Made a new recipe. Purchased more than 10 rolls of toilet paper at a time. Became that person at Costco.
Well, we are all out of time. I want to thank you again, Dr. Copley, for joining us. It was such a great conversation. We'll be sharing all of this out. It was great to catch up and to actually meet you, because I've never actually had the chance to meet you in person. And thanks also for the great tips about the affirmation book, and also with the 2 patterns as well, and just kind of starting off, each year. I think all that is great information for all of us here, and letting us know how you got started. That was all great information. So if folks want to catch up with you, do you have, how should they get in contact with you if they have questions for you?
Well, they could email me, and my email address is really difficult. My email address is ec@nau.edu. It's tough, just my initials. At nau.edu, Northern Arizona University.edu. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. This has been so much fun. Thank you, Nashawn and Brittany, for being on with us today. We'll be back on Tuesday. Next week, there'll only be 1 episode next week on Tuesday. We'll be meeting up with Maria Ellis. If you don't know her, she's a wonderful, wonderful conductor. Just one of our, I think, best Black women conductors that we have right now. Just really, really fantastic. So really excited for her to be on Tuesday. And then on Thursday, we won't be on because there's an ACDA leadership conference. And so at the same time, so can't do 2 things at once, not yet. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you on Tuesday. And thank you, Dr. Copley, for joining us today. It was so much fun.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It was really fun. Nice to meet you.